On August 18, 1913, inside the Monte Carlo casino, the crowd gathered around a single roulette table in absolute disbelief. The ball had just landed on black for 15th time in a row. What did the gamblers do? They gathered around and started betting aggressively on red. Their reasoning was simple. If the streak continued for so long, then it must come to an end. But the next spin, black. And the one after that, again black. By the time the streak ended, the ball has landed on black for 26 times in a row. On that night, casino walked away with millions and hundreds of gamblers were ruined. Now let me tell you this, the odd of this streak happening is 1 in 68.4 million. But what they didn't realize is on the 26th spin, the odd of the ball falling at black is exactly 50-50. The gamblers had fallen victim for a psychological trap so deeply embedded in our brain, it dictates our entire lives. This is the infamous gambler's fallacy. We like to think we're rational creatures, but when it comes to randomness, we're fundamentally broken. Today we're going to look at why we might be gambling like monkey, how does the math actually works, what caused them to fall for this trap, and how this affects our daily lives, decision making, from investing to medical decisions. Because this just isn't about casinos. Whether you realize it or not, you might be falling for this trap at work, in your relationships, and also with your money. To understand why, let's just look at this coin toss. For a single coin toss, the probability of landing on head or a tail is exactly half, right? Now imagine you flip a coin 20 times and it lands on head every single time. Before the 21st flip, if I ask you to bet on your life savings, what would you choose? Now you might be inclined to choose tail because after 20 heads, tail must come at some point, right? Mathematically, looking at a 21 flip sequence from the very start, the odds of landing head every single time is incredibly small. But this is where our brains fail. The coin does not have any memory. The coin does not care about the previous 20 flips. On the 21st flip, the odds of landing on head or a tail is exactly half. The fallacy lies in confusing the probability of a sequence with the probability of an isolated event. And this illusion runs so deep that it actually works in reverse. Imagine you walk into a room and saw someone roll a pair of dice, immediately hitting 666. What do you assume? Now you probably think, wow, they must have been rolling for a while to finally get that. This is inverse gambler fallacy. It is a false belief that for a rare event like 666 to occur, there must have been a history of prior attempts leading up to it. Now what happens when you throw human skills into the mix? This is where hot hand fallacy comes in. It states that if a basketball player makes 5 shots in a row, people believe that they're most likely to continue the winning streak. While the gambler's fallacy makes us expect a change in outcome, the hot hand fallacy makes us expect the same outcome. Not just that, hot hand fallacy is not considered as random and more based on the skill level, and are more likely to continue the streaks of winning when they believe that the process is non-random. Psychologists Aton and Fisher discovered why our brains played this way. We view human performance as non-random. We assume that a winning streak means they're more likely to continue winning. A fascinating 2010 study by Huber, Kirchler and Stock proved this. They gave participants 3 choices on a series of coin tosses. Bet on their own coin tosses, pay an expert with a great track record to predict the toss, or take a risk-free alternative with a small reward. Even though the coin toss is completely random, 24% of people paid an expert with previous successful track record. Among them, 74% of people continue to pay when the experts were right. More shockingly, if the experts were wrong, 57% of people still paid the expert anyways for the next round. They ultimately found that we're most likely to have put more faith in human performance than we do in random processes. So where does this desperate search for patterns come from? To find out, researchers decided to let monkeys gamble. Yeah, why not? Monkeys are also people. In a study done by Tommy Blanchard and his colleagues in the University of Rochester, New York, they let 3 monkeys were placed in front of a computer screen. They had to choose between options by simply gazing at them. The rewards were distributed completely random with 50-50 chance of winning. If monkeys were rational, they would choose randomly. Instead, what researchers have found that monkeys consistently chose whatever option won the previous time. They were displaying the hot hand fallacy. But wild monkeys don't understand probability, or they do not believe in luck or any superstitions. But why did they do it? Think about evolution. In the wild, if a monkey found a ripe fruit on a tree, the probability of finding more ripe fruits were much higher. In nature, resources are clusters, but events are not independent. So our brain evolved in a world where streaks were real. We're hardwired to see patterns because for millions of years it kept us alive. Now coming on to the most important part, where it actually affects our decision making. Back in 1820, the French polymath Marquis de Laplace noticed that men who are about expected to be father that month and who desperately wanted a son would go around counting how many boys were born in that village. If mostly boys were born that month, they would panic thinking they were going to have a girl, believing the universe somehow maintains an equilibrium of boys and girls being born every month. Now that might be 1820, but modern data shows that biases still remain similar to this. But modern data shows that we hold similar beliefs even today. Economists Hersh Schifrin and Meyer Statman found that investors routinely sell winning stocks too early, fearing a crash is about to happen, while holding on to losing stocks for far too long, expecting for a rebound. Some investors even buy stocks when it's low, expecting that it will grow soon. Another study on loan officers found that if there is no monetary incentive, if they have no monetary incentive, they're 8% less likely to approve loan application if they just approve the previous one. They subconsciously try to balance it off, regardless of the applicant's merits. In 1991, Claude Felter and Cook tracked lottery behaviors. On April 11, the number 244 won. Instantly, the number of people buying tickets for number 244 were significantly dropped by 41% over the next 3 days. People genuinely believed that if a number is drawn, believed a number couldn't win twice, even though the probability of drawing the same number is still the same. Even the video game industry exploits the gambler's fallacy. For example, loot boxes uses a thing called PT timer. If you open 10 loot boxes and get low quality item in every one of them, the game artificially increases the odd to get a rare item in the 11th one. Video game industry have engineered this to validate our cognitive bias just so that we can keep on opening more and more loot boxes. The gambler's fallacy arises because we suffer from what psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amor Tversky call the laws of small numbers. We mistakenly believe that tiny sample size must represent the larger sample size. Right? If we see 4 heads in a row, we believe even when people were given a small sample to random looking sequence of coin tosses, they generally keep the ratio of heads and tails close to 0.5. Can we fix it? It turns out it's almost impossible. In 1967, researchers Beach and Swenson took 2 groups of people. They thoroughly educated the first group of people on the mechanics of gambler's fallacy while leaving the second group in the dark. And the result was both groups still made the decision based on the length of the previous events. Knowing the trap exists doesn't really help stop your brain from stepping on it. So what we learned that gambler's fallacy doesn't just affect gamblers, it can affect any of us. We're good at finding patterns in the sea of randomness, and how we experience random events in the past shapes our thinking. It is not irrational as we see from the monkey experiment, but we don't want to misidentify characteristics of past relationships as indicators that our current relationships will necessarily follow the path. Nor do we want to look at a string of job losses or job rejections as a sign that we won't find a job in the future. Try to look at your daily life and see what events are independent and if you already fell for it or not. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video if the odds are in our favor, that is.